Hey everybody, it's back again for another Asus Graphics Card stream. So it's me, of course, JJ, and I've got, of course, my colleague Jake joining us here. We're getting ready to kick off another stream. We've got a nice round of updates, I think, this week. We're going to be covering actually two brand new graphics cards with the brand new GTX 650. Essentially, a little bit of a refresh in terms of our graphics card lineup. Great option for those of you I think are maybe going to be doing a first-time build or maybe doing a little bit of an upgrade where you're not necessarily looking to break the bank. Really nice budget and price point. Really solid card, average about 60 frames FPS at 1080p gaming across a wide number of titles. And then we've got another kind of nice sweet spot card with an update and refresh with the 3060 dual series, but in white. So another really great option. And this card, I think, is almost one of the best cards in the market in terms of giving you a hybrid kind of experience, whether you're maybe in the creator space and you're looking for a card to be able to benefit from acceleration, take advantage of new support like things like AV1, or maybe you're also looking to maybe do some gaming or maybe do a mix of both, right? Because you get everything from DLSS support to RTX to broadcast, a lot of really cool things. Cool, compact, quiet card, and it looks good, right? So we're going to touch on that. We're going to touch on some cool new games that, of course, are leveraging some of the latest technologies that are out there, including DLSS and RTX. We've got some cool partner updates in terms of some cooling. We're going to dive a little bit more into understanding what a media engine is, what AV1 is all about in this latest generation series for Ada Lovelace, and what it brought about in terms of offering AV1 encoding support and not just decoding support, which we saw within the 30 series GPUs. And we've got an absolutely super cool build from Tech 505, Daniel Kuba, who did something really, really interesting. I think might have been maybe the first build that I've seen using this type of setup that I'm really excited to be able to go into. So, Jake, excited to have you here for another graphics card stream, right?
Absolutely. Looking forward to it and seeing what the community has to say about the new hardware, and definitely curious what they have as far as questions or learning some new knowledge about the AV1 encoding, and to see their feedback on Daniel's build because it's definitely awesome.
Fantastic. So it looks like we've got Bruce Fritz joining us, man. Hey, fantastic. Thanks for joining us here on Facebook. If you guys are checking us out on Facebook, Twitter, or YouTube, we are doing a simulcast. And of course, if you're catching us on demand, thanks for catching us on demand. Feel free to go ahead and drop us a comment. You guys also, if you're not part of the Asus PCDIY community, feel free to go ahead and check out the link. It's in the description if you guys are checking us out on Facebook or YouTube. And we'd love to have you there. It's an amazing community of now over 41,000 PCDIY enthusiasts. And we absolutely love having users there that want to be able to talk about all the latest and greatest when it comes to NVIDIA-based graphics cards and your PC gaming builds and so much more. So let's see who else. We've got another Facebook user also letting us know hello. So thanks also for joining us. Jake, why don't you go ahead and just let us get a quick recap again on which social channels you can go ahead and follow us for all things Asus graphics cards.
Absolutely. So across Twitter, Facebook, and YouTube, you can find us at Asus Graphics NA. That's the handle that'll quickly get you to any of our content. And like JJ said, we are keeping frequent updates there on kind of the new hardware releases and any other content kind of related to maybe some of the games coming out, software updates. You'll see posts about that as they happen, and even can catch the occasional like a deal or promos going on. I know that Marvel Midnight Suns, I think, just ended a few days ago, but for anyone who did get one of those cards, I believe you still have until the end of February to claim that code. So definitely check out anything like that, and stay tuned for more news and updates.
Yeah, and also, if you guys aren't aware, one of the really cool things that we have when it comes to the, I think, Asus graphics card channels, right, is like Jake was noting, is that you're going to be able to get kind of the latest and greatest information, not only regarding our NVIDIA-based solutions, right, but different types of promotions, different activations, giveaway opportunities, a whole lot more. And that's going to continue to ramp up over the coming months. So that's a big part of kind of our kind of focus to be able to make sure that you're always kept in the know when it comes to everything related to Asus's NVIDIA graphics card solutions. So, Jake, I think we've got two products to be able to go ahead and delve into today. Is that right?
That's correct. So we've got both the GTX 1650, a new model launching for that. And then we've kind of mentioned it just briefly before, but we're actually going to highlight it more today, the RTX 3060 Dual, the white edition for that.
Very, very cool. So let's go ahead and I think first check out this GTX 1650. So this again, it's not a brand new based GPU, right? You know, and this was always a little bit of discussion. I'd love to know if you guys are checking this out right now in the chat. What do you let us know? Do you, when you're talking about a graphics card, do you say graphics card? Do you say video card, or do you say GPU? From our perspective as a manufacturer, right? We don't manufacture GPUs. Our partner, of course, NVIDIA is the one that manufactures GPUs. We produce graphics cards. So while this is not a new GPU, this is a refresh. So refreshes intermittently come about. Sometimes you might be maybe having a revision to the design in terms of the ID design. It could be an update like what we saw with the prior RTX 3060 Ti, which you saw the inclusion of GDDR6X, right? So you saw essentially an improvement in performance with a new type of memory. So these refreshes intermittently happen sometimes from kind of, let's say, initial GPU launch to later on in the actual GPU or the graphics card lifecycle, you could see essentially an update. And so this is essentially an update that we have here with the GTX 1650. There'll actually be two versions of this card, like we usually have for most Asus-based graphics cards, where we have a standard model and we also have an OC model. Now, to be clear, it doesn't mean that you cannot overclock the standard model. It just means that the OC model does have a factory overclock. Jake, on your side, do you kind of favor one or the other, the overclock model or the standard model?
I mean, we touched on this a little bit last stream. Me being honestly just a noob with overclocking and everything, getting that little bit of extra base performance, especially when you combine that with the auto overclocking from like GPU Tweak 3, it's the easy go-to for myself. I know that the model can run a little bit of a premium over the non-OC model, but I think in general it's kind of worth getting that extra performance, especially if you're someone of my nature where you're looking for that kind of one click, you know, just install it and be ready to go solution versus someone who might be more apt to start tweaking the card and really trying to get every single megahertz out of it.
Yeah. Now, I don't think you have the pricing yet there up for these, but overall, in terms of the overall price point, we're not really actually talking about a really big delta here.
Mhm.
You know, when we talk actually about the graphics card in itself, you're only talking about approximately a $5 price point difference between the actual OC model and the standard model. So, you know, really not that much more expensive to be able to essentially get the factory overclock. And if you guys are interested in kind of finding out a little bit more on kind of the easy way to be able to overclock your graphics card through GPU Tweak, check out last week's graphics card stream where we actually did a little bit of a quick walkthrough with our graphics card utility, which will work on all current NVIDIA-based graphics cards that are on the market. So it doesn't matter whether you're talking about a 40 series, a 30 series, a 20 series, a 10 series. Heck, you could go back to a 900 series and it would still work. And we offer some really nice one-touch options where you can just click a button and it has like an automated profile, so that you can go ahead and maybe take a little bit more advantage of your graphics card if you're looking for a little bit of a nice bump in performance. But let's go ahead and quickly bring up that page. I think you already have the product page, or I can go
Mhm.
ahead and bring it up here. Why don't you go ahead and check out the tech specs so we can actually see what the clock speed differential is between the two here. So I think right here, we're looking at the standard. Is that right?
This is the OC one that I've got pulled up.
Okay, yeah. So if you guys are wondering, essentially the easiest way you can check that out, and maybe we can go ahead and just drop those banners there so that we can go ahead and allow people to see that a little bit more clearly. You can always go down to engine clock, guys, and under engine clock information, you'll be able to see essentially the two different target speeds. So if we go ahead and scroll there a little bit on the page, go down to the engine clock speed, we can see the default mode, right, which would be your default frequency. So that's 620 megahertz, right? So that's your standard boost clock. Now, keep in mind, boost clock, it is always contingent on a couple of different factors, right, including kind of your power envelope and your thermal envelope. But definitely here, you're going to get a cool and quiet card. You don't need to worry about either one of those. And you can see there in the OC mode, that'll get you a little bit more, right? So if you enable that, you went up to 1650, right? So if we go ahead and take a look, though, at the OC variant, I don't know if you have the page there for the 1650 OC, or you're looking at this already the overclock version,
Mhm.
right?
I've got the OC edition up. Told you it was my favorite of the two.
Yeah, yeah. So yeah, if we take a look at, let's see the standard, let me see if I can go ahead and bring up the standard. We can check to see what the delta might be. But let me see if I can bring it up here. Yeah, so I think, just give me 1 second here. And I'll see if I can bring it up on my end. But again, a really solid option. And again, you're only talking about about 175 to about $180 here for the graphics card. And this one, you should pretty much be seeing channel availability very shortly. So you'll see pretty much pop up not only on, let's say, places like the Asus eStore, but you'll also go ahead and see that in a wider range of retailers. We're talking about Amazon or Newegg or any of our other kind of channel partners, right? So again, if you guys want to figure out a little bit more information resident to how to kind of easily overclock the card, you can check out our GPU tweak utility that we covered last week. So it looks like Jake went ahead and brought up the other page.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so we've got the standard model here.
And then you can see you guys go, you can always kind of compare those values. So you can see the corresponding default clock and the OC clock information. So that allows you to just go ahead and a little bit greater sense between the two. Looks like we've got some other people joining us here on the stream as well. So let's go ahead and check it out. So we've got Eric Castor. Hey, what's good, man? Hopefully Thursday's treating you well, man. Thanks for joining us here on the stream, man. Thank you so much. I got Michael, a friend up from up north in Canada. Fantastic to have you here. Where else besides Facebook is this live? Yes, you can go ahead and check us out on YouTube as well as on Twitter. So we simulcast to all three spots. So again, you might not be familiar that we do have actually essentially new social channels. So if you guys have checked us out or checked maybe me out on some of our other live streams that we've done, those are on our Asus North America channels, which we have a Twitter, we have a Facebook, and a YouTube. But specifically, this stream is on our Asus North America graphics card channel. So Jake, why don't we go ahead and just drop those one more time before we get ready to go into our next product here?
Absolutely. So again, guys, just the Asus Graphics NA across Twitter, Facebook, and YouTube. Easiest way to find us and stay up to date on latest hardware and software and gaming update news.
Very, very cool. All right. Lastly, and just in case anybody's kind of wondering, again, when we talk about the dual series from kind of a positioning, we also covered this in a prior graphics card stream. Is remember, we have a couple of different series, well, actually a few different series, right? Where we've got, let's say, cards like our Turbo series, we have our Standard series, we have our Dual series, we have our KO series, and Tough Gaming, and ROG Strict series. So when we're generally talking about kind of this more entry price point and also performance positioning for this type of graphics card, you're generally going to be looking at cards within our Standard series, so just Asus branded. They could also be under the Dual series. And for cards like the 1650, we have offered up to, let's say, like Tough Gaming, but you generally won't see our highest end specialized designs that we might have, such as our ROG Strict Edition graphics cards, which you would need to be jumping into something about like a 3060 class and higher to generally see those type of cards. Now, speaking of a 3060, I think we also got a new update here in terms of the 3060. Is that right, Jake?
That's correct. But before we get into this, I just want to make a comment that I know not everybody's always going to be excited about, say, like a GTX 1650 type of model card. But I think some of the stuff is slept on a little bit, especially when you've got some popular esports titles that are not exactly hard to drive. So while we're not going to spend a lot of time on the 1650, it's definitely worth checking out. And for anyone that's, say, got a little brother or a cousin or someone in the family or close friend that's wanting to get into gaming, there's not really a better place to start than something like this to get into some of those easier to run games. And then you're not worried about, say, pushing Cyberpunk at 4K. And especially with some of the DLSS 3 options that you have, or 2, some of this can perform a lot better than people might give it credit for. So it's always worth checking out, especially for the specific game that you are looking into, whether something like this might actually be an option that you didn't give credit to at first.
Yeah, and I also, the way I look at it too is it really just depends on the type of kind of gamer or even the creator that you might be, right? Maybe you have a little bit of an older desktop that you don't necessarily kind of do a massive amount of gaming. Maybe you're doing a little bit of productivity work, right? And so maybe you're just looking a little bit for GPU acceleration, right? And so it's a great thing here is that this card can still give you actually nice acceleration for video content, right? You can get a performance uplift for encoding, right? You have multiple kind of avenues, right? Even if you just want to go to like multiple displays, right? So maybe you just want to run some multiple displays. This could be a nice option. And also the power envelope is quite low. So when you talk about kind of having to consider, hey, do I have to maybe go out and buy an entirely new power supply for something like that? You're solid. And even though again we've targeted saying that this is, I'd say, an approximate about a 60 FPS type card, depends on, of course, the games, right? Image quality settings. You can legitimately be taking a look at a wide range of games. So it's like Far Cry at 1080p. You could definitely be driving at 60 frames a second. excuse me, yes, 60 frames a second or a little bit more, right? You jump into something like Rainbow Six Siege, you could easily be breaking like 100 frames, 120, 140 frames, especially if you maybe add in a little bit of overclocking. Tomb Raider, The Witcher, Wolfenstein, Control, Civilization, a lot of games like there, you're still going to be able to get very healthy frame rates. And of course, if you pair this with something like one of our G-Sync monitors, variability in that frame rate isn't going to be as critical, right? So even if you're maybe dropping down, in 40s to let's say like 80, because essentially you're adapting your refresh rate to the output of the graphics card, you can still maintain a smooth and responsive experience, right? And we have G-Sync enabled monitors that literally are going down, sub $200, right? So again, if you maybe haven't upgraded to something like a 1080p 165 hertz, that could be a great option to kind of pair that in there as well. So there's, I think, a good amount of value within that. We've got somebody also noting here
Absolutely.
that they're interested in seeing, of course, maybe a high-performing dual GPU design. I think right now, the complexity that you have is the reality is dual GPU designs, they are not readily supported by the driver, right? So NVIDIA, I think, has really kind of made the most sensible decision here in terms of designing and developing GPUs and supporting them through auxiliary technologies with things like DLSS, right? To be able to even give you higher performance. Like if you literally, because you could literally go from running rasterized to like DLSS and be seeing a performance uplift, 50, 60, 70% in certain game titles, right? Which is literally like having a secondary GPU, but without all the
Mhm.
complexity that can sometimes come with the frame timing considerations, the more advanced driver support, the load balancing, the power supply, the thermal balancing issues, the slot configurations that you have to balance when you just go for a dual GPU type setup, or even having a card that had kind of two GPUs on it, right? So I think, right now what we're reaching into is we're reaching into a new era where we're seeing kind of, these AI supported technologies that are kind of, I think, bringing a more practical and easier way. And that's the other cool thing is that you can see that the timeline to develop the amount of games that are getting support for things like DLSS 2 and DLSS 3, it's so much quicker, right, than in the past where you might have seen conditional games, whether or not they get SLI support, right, or whether they got NVLink support. And so from my kind of perspective, I think it makes more sense. And it's also easier for the user because they don't have to worry about so many other parameters. They know, hey, I can just go out and I can buy something like a 4080 or 4090, and I'm going to be getting, amazing gaming performance, right?
I've got to echo that same sentiment. As much as I loved the aesthetic of some of these dual GPU setups, and I definitely have my dual 10 series cards, it's honestly not a bad way to go in dropping this. As JJ said, it was always so conditional as to what games supported that multi GPU functionality, what games had SLI support, and how well it worked on top of it. You did have some games that might showcase nearly double performance, or you might have some games that got 10% performance, or may have gained some average FPS but dropped in frame rates or had other issues. So, like JJ mentioned, dropping that complexity and having a bit more consistent experience, especially as high performing as the cards are becoming today. Because when SLI was a thing, we were running what, like 1080p was still mainstream. And now you're getting to where that may still be the case, but 4K is becoming a lot more popular. And if we're already at 4K, how quickly are we going to advance to say 8K displays or something? And what benefit will we have even if SLI was still a thing versus, as JJ mentioned, having the new features and technology like DLSS 3 and some of the other benefits. So,
Yeah, I think the other thing too, speaking as a monitor manufacturer, right, and also a key partner with NVIDIA on the G-Sync initiative, and also if you take a look more holistically at things like what NVIDIA has really been pushing for, along with our focus on things like response, right, and the overall kind of system latency experience, which we also talked about this in last week's stream where we talked a bit about NVIDIA Reflex, is that you want to try to maximize a system's total system latency, right? And so when you add more endpoints in that can introduce more latency, that is also not going to really be positive for a gamer, right? You don't want to necessarily just be able to have something and have it negatively affect you. So I think it's all about trying to ensure, are you meeting that end goal target of not only getting more frames, but lower latency, and of course, an amazing level of flexibility in terms of the image quality options you have available within the game. We got a question there in terms of other questions. Feel free We do focus this stream to try to generally try to target things that are related to our Asus NVIDIA-based graphics card solutions and kind of that ecosystem. But at the same time, if we can give you guys a little bit of insight, no problem. So feel free, if the opportunity allows for, definitely ask. And as always, if we can't end up covering it, feel free to always go ahead and tag one of us, myself or Jake, in our Asus PCDIY group, and we would look forward to answering any of your guys' questions in the community. Okay. And again, if you're checking us out on YouTube or Facebook, you'll see the link for the PCDIY group in the description. It should be there. If not, I can go ahead and drop it in there, and you guys can let me know, and we can go ahead and do that. So I think next up, we're going to make a big jump. We're literally going to be doubling about almost twice the performance, moving over into the 3060. So here we move into a much more modern generation-based graphics card when we're talking about the 3060 series. I think you can update that page there. Yeah. And so the really cool thing here is that, like I said, when I was talking about the 1650, we're taking a look at approximately about 60 frames a second for 1080p across a wide range of games. Here we literally almost about double that performance. And it's not just the overall average. You want to talk about minimum frame times, minimum FPS, as well as peak, right? But overall, you're getting a graphics card that's going to be in a lot of ways about twice as fast, and even in a couple of ways a little bit faster than that. So this is a really, really great choice, I think, for a modern kind of PC DIY builder. If they're building either a system right now and they might have a little bit more of a limited budget, or again, maybe they're kind of in that sweet spot where they don't want to spend a huge amount, but they want to really be able to play out the majority of games that are on the market, be able to have nice image quality settings, not necessarily have to have things down at low, right? Be able to maybe try and toggle different things on, like NVIDIA Reflex, be able to try out things like DLSS. It's a great kind of card to be able to get into the modern technologies that are offered in the kind of the NVIDIA technological suite on the GPU side. Still have something that's very compact and cool and quiet. I love this dual card because it's literally going to fit in probably 90% plus of chassis that are on the market. You would probably only have an issue in a super, super, super compact SFF based chassis, and even many of the most compact SFF based chassis would be able to accommodate this GPU. And you don't have to have a crazy power supply to also be able to power this in terms of an 850 watt or 1,000 watt, right? Probably the vast majority of you that are running any type of power supply, you're going to be able to get this in there and be able to get up and running. So again, you're taking a look at approximately about double the FPS performance. Plus, you're able to even extend that a bit more when you talk about introducing things like DLSS, which is going to be supported on this card. Keep in mind, it doesn't support DLSS 3. That is still limited to the latest generation-based cards, such as the 4070 Ti, the 4080, and the 4090. Jake, I know your thoughts here on this card. You're absolutely a huge fan of it because it happens to be the white edition, right? We do also have a dual edition. I think I might have the images here. So why don't you go ahead and speak a little bit on that and see if I can maybe bring up the other images here that we have for that.
So as JJ mentioned, I'm always a huge fan of the white aesthetic. From a person who got into PCs because of the aesthetics more so than the gaming, having the kind of white color scheme, I feel allows some of the contrast and design of the cards to pop out more and be more apparent. And so it's something I've always appreciated. And I especially love this because for a little while now, there's not been a great pairing to something, say, like the Asus Prime series, and maintaining that white aesthetic in that kind of same price and performance bracket. So I think this is like an excellent card to pair into that. And again, we've got cases like the AP201 where sure, some of the larger cards can fit, but you're kind of going for that small form factor, and something like this again pairs very well with that. Um,
Yeah, let
and
me go ahead and just show people here just for kind of reference. So this is actually our AP201. This is our micro ATX chassis. So this is a medium form factor based chassis. Really great option here if you wanted to put in something like, even up to you could fit a 4070 Ti in here, but
mhm.
you can see how it could pair really well with this. And then maybe you consider something like our Prime micro ATX, and you could actually have a really nice price to performance compact white themed build. And so it's been really nice to be able to kind of flesh out our portfolio where, of course, we recently launched all the higher end 40 series cards in white, right? So the 4080 and the 4090 have been really popular. And then we introduced the 3060 Ti in white, which is another kind of nice step up, really a strong card for 1440p based gaming. And now we've gone ahead and introduced this 3050 in white. So I think it covers a pretty nice balance from kind of tackling in, lower price budget users that still want something that's in that white design aesthetic, right? Bold and bright, really works well with really lighting, whether you want to go with any RGB or you do want to go with some RGB, it works well kind of in either scenario. And then you can also go ahead and step it up, right?
Absolutely. It's always worth noting that one of Asus's strong points is just the wide variety of products. It's kind of hard to be somebody to where there's not something for you. And even to the point to where JJ mentioned that unless you get into super, super small form factor and tight spaces, something like this fits into almost any case. Even in that aspect, the Phoenix series is offered, which is even more compact. And one thing of note, as we're discussing this, is that while the White series is new, it's not the first 3060 series. And as JJ mentioned, it's already a good value, but we are running some February promo sales for some of the 3060 and 3060 Ti series cards. I believe Dual Series is one of them, and there might have been some tough stock left as well that still had a little bit of a promo. But anyways, that's also worth checking out. Um, like you said, if you're getting into some of these games, the card can kind of punch above its weight for some titles, especially with the features that you get with it. So take some time to check those out if you haven't and you're graphics card hunting right now.
Yeah, and we'll go ahead and if you want to bring up, while I go ahead and just answer this question on the Hyperion and actually show how it can also easily accommodate our 40 series higher end cards with no problems. We can take a look at the clock speeds that we've got on that 3060 card right there, and also maybe see if we can take a look at the rest of the ID design and a couple other images there. So somebody was asking here is that when is the Hyperion GR701 coming out? So that's our brand new kind of flagship kind of EATX focused chassis. Works well for air cooled or liquid cooled base builds. We are going to be looking to probably MPI this maybe by the very end of this month, if not early next month. So we're just right now finalizing it. So again, if you're part of our PCDIY group or check out our Friday weekly streams, you'll definitely find out as soon as we're getting ready to push this out to the channel. But we're going to be coming up very shortly on this guy. We'll have an official MSRP shortly to be able to also go ahead and release onto it. And for those that you are wondering, hey, what is the GR701? That's this guy right here. So you can see right there, it's fitting in beautifully, no problems. Even our flagship card there with the ROG Strix 4090, you can go vertical or you can go horizontal. There's no issues in terms of any compression that you have to worry about for the cable when you're talking about that 12-volt high power cable when you're attached there. So you're good to go. You can fit in either configuration. I'm personally a fan of hashtag Team Horizontal. I like the traditional mount. I think it looks best, but nothing wrong with the vertical. I've worked very hard with our team to be able to make sure that we have a great looking card in terms of the aesthetics from both a vertical design and a horizontal. But let me know in the chat, are you team horizontal or are you team vertical? I already know Jake. We're not even going to ask Jake because Jake, he's just going to say team vertical, right?
That's
but
not true.
I like the harmonious, more balanced design that you have between the separation between the motherboard and the graphics card. I feel that sometimes visually, when you go vertical, it eats just a little bit more space. And also there is some legitimate, installation factors you have to account that you might be blocking access to M.2 slots. You have to account for a more expensive setup configuration with a riser cable. There's some other kind of factors that you have to evaluate. And again, we've covered a lot of this and more if you're interested in that inside of our Asus PCDIY group. So, and I would agree. I think he nailed it, right? It looks good either way, and that's right. We've designed it to look good either which way. But the GR701, which you can definitely pair up with your 4070 Ti, your 4080, or 4090, I think those are the right cards to patch up with such a high-end chassis there. That's going to be a great option, and that'll be coming in the not-too-distant future. It looks like also,
like you said, he nailed it. Either way works. There's not a wrong answer here.
They agree there that either which way looks good, right? Okay. Did you bring up the clock speeds there that we can take a look there, Jake?
I did, and we've got one more quick question too that I'm actually curious about as well because I don't know that I've seen this yet, but I do know that it is possible. So have you seen any build yet, JJ, that is a small form factor design with a 4090 in it? 4090
with a
Strix.
4090, I'm trying to think if I've seen something.
I know some can support it, but the ones I'm thinking of off the top of my head are a bit more open design and might be a slightly
You probably
larger
something
small
kind of
form
like in
factor.
the like Beast kind of design kind of setup where you got
Yeah.
more of an open frame. But from a lot of the more standard chassis, when you're talking about the stuff like the Meshalicious, right, or even if you talk about some of the mini chassis, you really have to kind of go to a larger chassis to really be able to accommodate those cards. To that point, we are evaluating a design within our turbo lineup to try to have maybe something like a 2.5 slot turbo type design in the higher end 40 series. This is still under essentially design and development. But again, if you guys are watching us on the stream, you're part of the PCDIY group, you're going to find out about that as soon as we have it available. So again, if you always want to be in the know when it comes to all the latest and greatest for Asus's video graphics card solutions, make sure to check out the stream, make sure to be part of the group, and you're going to find out about it as soon as we have it. All right. So I think you've got the clocks up right there, so we can see that we've got 1837 right there in terms of the default clock speed, and then 1867 in terms of the actually OC boost clock speed. And again, do keep in mind that we do have essentially two variants of this card. So we have both the standard model and we have the overclocked model. And from a pricing perspective, we're looking at, again, what's the price delta between the OC model and the standard model?
Again, it's not very much. It's about a $10 delta.
Okay.
So I give the same reason I did for the 1650. That
Probably
it's
just
worth
go
paying a little bit extra.
with the overclock model, right?
Mhm.
Yeah, you might as well. And I'll tell you that with the 3060, one of the really cool things, right, is that 3060 really favors itself when it comes to actually overclocking. With just a little bit of adjustment, maybe to your power target, and a little bit of increase to the frequency, you can be looking at about another 15 to maybe 15 plus frames that you're adding on in terms of performance. So that's quite a bit of a healthy jump there in terms that it's a card, because it's it's pretty nice and tight in terms of the power envelope and the thermal requirements, that you can go have a little bit of extra room to be able to get a little bit more performance. So if you're a little bit of a tweaker, you want to be able to get a little bit more performance, take advantage of our GPU tweak utility, which makes this really easy, then I would definitely say it's worthwhile at least installing it and trying it out. You do also have some nice standard OC options that are available to you within the NVIDIA GeForce software, which you can enable their overlay experience too if you don't want to install our optional utility. But we always do recommend our GPU tweak utility to have the kind of the most comprehensive kind of tweaking, tuning, and monitoring for your graphics card. Now on the card design, I think some of the really cool design accents you'll see here is that we do have our Axial Tech ring barrier based fan, so that focuses more static pressure optimized to be able to direct into the heatsink assembly. Really nice full white shroud that's on the card. You also get that nice white aesthetic throughout the entirety of the design. There's no controllable RGB on here, so do keep that in mind. I also really love the fact, again, in this segment, it's not generally that common that you always get a premium backplate. So it's the fact that you also get a white backplate, because again, if you install your card horizontally, that's the part that you're also going to noticeably see. And so I also really love the design language on here. It's got a little bit of that gray to break up a little bit of kind of that white, which sometimes when it looks too white, you get a little bit of that kind of, I think you see blue a little bit. So I like seeing the gray, because the gray helps to offset that a bit, right? So really overall nice ID design to be able to complement the overall card's aesthetic. And again, very compact. Let's go ahead, just quickly take a look at the dimensions there under the tech specs.
Absolutely. And just to highlight the backplate, it's a full aluminum one. So it's not some skimped on cheap backplate that's just there for aesthetics.
And so I think, yeah, all the way down there towards the bottom, we should have our dimensions there. So you can see it's very compact, right? We're talking about so less than 8 inches, right? And then 5 inches in terms of the width, right? And then your Z height, right, is what's that? Less than 1.5. So 8 inches, really, that is going to fit in just about almost any type of chassis. You'd be very constrained to find a chassis that almost wouldn't be able to accommodate this graphics card. Somebody's asking for the link to the group. Yeah, sure. Let me go ahead and drop that in the chat for you.
I just dropped it a moment ago.
Oh,
Should be in there.
fantastic. All right. Thank you so much, Jake. All right.
This guy gets it. Love the white GPU. My man.
All right. So yeah, this essentially for both of these cards, you should be seeing these pop up in terms of overall channel availability in the not too distant future. Generally, when we announce a card here to the timeline that you're going to see it available in the channels, it's usually probably about 7 to 14 days is generally the approximate time frame. Keep in mind that our channel partners, such as let's say maybe Amazon or Newegg, Micro Center, B&H, whoever might be carrying our product, they can have their own respective logistic timelines. So there could be some variability in terms of the amount of time that it takes for the graphics card to become available for you to purchase. So that's the reason why we generally give you about an approximation. You guys can also make sure to take advantage of our text notification that if you do want to purchase directly from us at the Asus store, for the PCDIY group, we do have a dedicated text number. You can sign up for notifications, including GPU notifications. So if you're looking for an Asus graphics card, it's a great way to get notified once the actual cards come in stock if you want to buy direct from us. Otherwise, make sure to take advantage of notification listings that you have available from channel partners, whether, again, that could be Newegg, Amazon, B&H, whoever it might be.
Now,
No, there's
somewhat,
no group just for chassis. Yeah, that group covers
mhm,
everything. We cover everything in our PCDIY ecosystem, from chassis to monitors to keyboards to mice to power supplies, motherboards. It's all covered in there. So it'll get you covered across the board. Just one
yeah,
place
JJ
to
will
get
keep
you
you updated on everything.
on everything. Yeah, so you don't got to worry about that. All right, very, very cool. And so I think that gives us the overall update there on both of those two new GPUs. Very cool in terms of, I think, their design. Nice hit sweet spot in terms of the overall price point. We've given you a little bit of that perspective in terms of the pricing. And again, don't forget that I think for that 3060, right, it's nice to know that you're getting essentially those new kind of supplemental technologies that, when we're talking about a GPU, a lot of times you're just focusing purely on just, let's say, the raster performance. But keep in mind, compared again from something like that GTX 1650 here, right? We're jumping up to, second generation RT cores that are on here. You get the third gen tensor cores. You're going to get DLSS support. You're going to get AV1 decoding support, right? You're going to get NVIDIA broadcast, right? So that it keeps getting improved, right? In terms of so many different things. And again, on the creator side, maybe you're not even a gamer. Maybe you're just somebody that's looking for some GPU acceleration. Maybe you want to run neural filters in Photoshop, right? That's a great way to be able to get a better experience within a content creation application, and you can use NVIDIA's Studio driver. So if you're not aware, NVIDIA does offer a Studio driver and a game-ready driver, and the Studio driver is more closely developed with ISV partners, such as, let's say, Adobe or DaVinci Resolve, AutoCAD, all right, any number of the wide range applications to be kind of purpose built for stability, features, and functionality for those applications. And that can give you a wide range of benefits. And this is that type of card that I think, again, from the price to the performance to the cooling to the power envelope, it does a really great job at giving you a great experience across any one of those use case scenarios. So next up, I think we've got a little bit of partner news, right?
Yes, we do. And this actually touches a little bit on the comments and questions about whether some of this stuff will fit, such as like a 4090 Strix. So AlphaCool has launched their I always butcher their names. IceWolf 2, an AIO variant for the Asus RTX 40 series. So this
Yep.
will fit both the Strix and Tough. And you'll notice that this looks maybe a little bit slimmer and shorter than,
I'm
say,
going
the
to
Strix
switch this up
Cooler.
here. No, go ahead and keep going, Jake. I think I've got a little bit of a higher image here. So let me go ahead and just share that over so we can take a look at it just a little bit. There we go.
Awesome. So again, as you can see from this, JJ's got a little bit better picture of it. You're going to have a much smaller form factor. And so while some of these cards may not actually be limited in the overall size, the length of the card will prevent you from installing it. And I think something along this line would probably fit in the AP201, whereas the standard air-cooled Strix 4090 would not, correct,
Yeah,
JJ?
yeah, yeah. You're 100% right. So the 4080 and the 4090 right now, they wouldn't fit in something like the AP201. You could only go to the Max 4070 Ti, and for maybe some of those really compact, tighter chassis, you might be again more limited. So here, because you are leveraging the fact that the PCB is actually quite compact on the 4080 and the 4090 for our tough gaming and for ROG Strix graphics cards, this one is fully compatible with the tough gaming and ROG Strix 4090. And for the 4080, I think right now AlphaCool only denotes the ROG Strix model. Again, you can check their website to confirm on all the models that are supported. And keep in mind, this is not a requirement. We do just like to highlight our partners that work with us to be able to offer a rich and deep experience for NVIDIA-based solutions, whether they're going to be water blocks or whether you have an interesting product like this, which simplifies the cooling experience. This is a little bit similar to kind of like what we've had with our LC series, where we have a pre-integrated, essentially AIO pump and reservoir and tubing and everything like that to be able to offer better thermal dissipation performance. Our cards are already going to be outstanding, really class leading in terms of cool and quiet operation with the thermal assemblies. Plus, the ID design looks fantastic. But if you're somebody that, maybe you're just looking to maybe take advantage of our tough gaming or our RG Strix card, and you're a little bit more space constricted, this could be an option, although you still have to account for the tubing and the radiator size, right? Or you may be looking to maybe just eke out a little bit more thermal margin, right? In terms of maybe some clock speed tuning. This could be a great option for you. So they will be coming to market shortly with this. You can check out, of course, any of your respective retailers that may carry AlphaCool water cooling hardware if you're interested in checking this out. And again, in terms of compatibility, right now they have it listed for the 4080 and 4090, and 4090 should be for ROG Strix and Tough Gaming, and I think for the 4080 it notes only initially ROG Strix, but you can follow up on their page to get more information there. What do you think, Jake? Would you keep it stock, or would you maybe go, and maybe this is a future stream, right? Would you go air cooled? Would you go water cooled? Where are you at?
So, I mean, you know that I come from a water cooling background, but but with just how nice the Strix coolers look this generation, and given the amount of tech put into the performance of the cooler, as long as it fits, it sits. I would actually stay air cooled this generation for the Strix series specifically. If I were going to decide to water cool, I'd actually go for the tough model because I would just feel bad about pulling such a beautiful cooler off of the Strix series, especially when I often myself build for the aesthetics and that overall design.
Yeah, it's tough. I mean, that's a good looking card, right? I don't know, if I'd really want to take that off. It really does look good in there. I love that tail light design in there. It just looks really beautiful in terms of that. And we've spent a lot of time and effort on there. I agree, though, if you are probably going to go liquid cooled, the Tough Gaming card, even though it's still very cool, quiet, and fast, outstanding build quality, it's a great choice. It is probably the more sensible option to liquid cool, because part of the premium of going with the ROG Strix model is getting that milled vapor chamber cooling design, right? Which that's specifically part of that heatsink assembly. So if you were to liquid cool, it probably makes more sense to consider the Tough Gaming. But I know some people like the ROG Strix because it also has a default higher TGP and TBP rating, which means essentially that the power rating, the power envelope, is higher for the ROG Strix series than it is for the Tough Gaming series. They both support the maximum, so 600 watts is the actual maximum. You can adjust that within GPU Tweak, but the ROG Strix series does come with a higher TGP. All right, so next up, let's go ahead and what do we got next?
I think we're actually about to highlight some of the water cooling. Even though I said I would pull the Strix air cooler off the card, we do actually have a very beautiful build from
Oh,
Daniel
doing the builder
Kuba.
spotlight already before the games. All right, all right. Let
Yeah.
me. I think you have images, or do you want me to? I think I've got images. Either which way.
If you wouldn't mind pulling it up.
All
I
right, all right. So yeah,
since
we've
since we're
got.
talking about aesthetics and we're talking about just how pretty everything looks, we'll just go ahead and keep on this train.
All right, sure. Let me go ahead and bring this up here. So this is a this is a really cool build. So this is from Tech 505. Builder's name is Daniel Kuba. This is a really interesting design, guys. I was kind of really just blown away by the creativity and the kind of ingenuity that he had here for this build. So this is actually using pretty much almost an all Asus kind of setup that we have right here. So we've got our brand new Tough Gaming GT502. That's our split chamber chassis. Again, fantastic, works well with any one of the 40 series graphics cards we produce, horizontally or vertically. But he's done something really interesting. One, he used the chassis, I don't want to say in a non-intended way, but in a different configuration, right? He's really kind of embracing the PCDIY spirit. And we can see right here, we've got our Tough Gaming motherboard in here. This is Z690, so that means current kind of generation, Alder Lake, Raptor Lake kind of series, DDR5. We got all the other stuff. You can see right there, he's got his riser cable. And then we can see we've got a water-blocked GPU that's in here, right? Some awesome bits power water cooling hardware that we have in here. Some really dynamic and crazy kind of show coolant. Generally, I'm usually a fan of, basic coolants for long term, but you can't deny that this absolutely looks stunning in terms of kind of this pearlescence cooling setup. But it doesn't stop there, right? If this was just the build right there, it's already looked pretty cool, because very rarely do you ever see a GPU offset to the side like this configuration. And also, I really love that he kind of spent the time to route the lines of the loop, right, around kind of the board, right, as opposed to having anything kind of cross over anything. It's really cool to be able to see it kind of go up and then around, right? It takes a little bit more work and layout consideration, right? But it also shows the room that the chassis has. So if we take a look right here, the back, even though normally we wouldn't show this as already the second image, this is where the story starts to get more interesting. Well, it looks like we've got some quick disconnect fittings right there, right? So why would you have that? Well, guess what? He went ahead and set up an entire different piece here, right? So Jake, what are you already thinking here when you're seeing this?
I'm gonna assume this is the oh, he didn't actually go with the Morrad. I was gonna say this was going right into the Morrad under the desk, That's where I was thinking it was going. It's such a typical kind of QDC and external setup that people go with when they want to cram all the aesthetics or have something to where there is no room in the case. And
Yeah.
I'm actually
So here,
I'm
this is the
actually
really
loving
cool
that
part.
this man has put
He
together
took
another
another
case.
chassis. He took our AP201, which is our micro ATX chassis, which we showed off in white. This is the black version right here, and did custom work there to even integrate the Tough Gaming logo. And he put this little recycler because he calls this a recycler. There's actually a mechanized setup there, which actually pumps and it works to actually pull through everything. Really, really cool. So he actually had to design this all himself in terms of actually setting it up, having the actual motor system in place to have this actually all running. Really, really, really cool in terms of the setup. So you can actually see right here, again, he's also using our Tough Gaming fans. So these are Tough Gaming 120 millimeter static pressure optimized fans, RGB, dual ring barrier. Really, really cool. Love this overall, though, setup. When you kind of take it, you can see you've got the temperature readout, you've got the controls there for that setup on the recycler. You can see another little shot of it there. And overall, you can see it's essentially this two-part system configuration. Really, really cool. You can also see the other cool part is he went further with the kind of the spirit of the mod here, where he did a dual color design. So he painted it here where we've got the black, but he then added a little bit of white just to give it a little bit of a different vibe. Do a little bit of what's called color blocking. So change up maybe having that kind of full black spectrum and give you a little bit of a pop externally, which I think is nice because it causes your eye to have the sensation that the inside becomes even brighter because you've kind of opened up your eye, right, in terms of its overall color aesthetic. But
Now,
overall, really, really cool. Why don't you go ahead and let me know your thoughts here, Jake? While I go up, he actually shared some video with us, so I want to actually show this little thing running in motion here. So give me a sec.
yeah, I think I could be wrong, but I think he might have posted another picture at one point, and that's actually not a painted chassis. I think he got two of the GT502s, and he's got the white and black one there, and then a flipped one where he mixed the parts together.
So he just you might be actually right. I'd have to double check. Maybe it might be in his
I
submission form when
think
we
he
take a
merged
look.
the cases,
Yeah, when we take a look
but
at his submission form, but he might have, he might have actually like modded the two chassis together, which that's pretty wild if that was the case, right? You
yeah,
actually took a white
I
edition chassis and you took the other one and you kind of put it together, right? So
I'm just
yeah, we've
props
got
for
some.
like taking the AP201 and making a whole like external like case for it. That I appreciate that he went out of his way to take an entire case meant for its own computer just to use it to cram the extra cooling in.
Yeah, so here we can go. Let's go ahead and take a look right here. So we've got a little bit of a video right here, and you can actually hear. Let me see if I'm quiet. That's pretty cool, right? Where you can actually, hear the quote unquote recycler coming into play, right? You actually are hearing hearing how it works. I think that's a pretty cool just overall setup. It's definitely something very different than the norm. See right here, we got one. I think one other video that he shared over with us. Give me a second here. Yeah. All right. Let me go ahead and share this one here. Yeah, so here you guys can see, pretty cool. Again, there's the primary portion of the system, right? You can actually see it nicely lit up there. Nice little accent, the combination right there. And those handles, they are functional. You can literally lift the chassis with them, which especially for a water-cooled build like this is pretty cool. So overall, I think big props here to Daniel. I'm going to go ahead and bring up his submission form, see what we actually have from him that he's filled out in regards to this build and how we kind of all brought it together. So give me a second to go ahead and bring up that form. Also, we're welcoming one of the absolute best builders and modders in the game, one of my favorite guys, one of my friends up north right there, the one, the only, Snef. He's apologizing for being late. It's okay. I think when you're a masterclass builder and modder like Snef, it's all right. Take your time. No worries, man. We're happy to have you here on the stream. Let
He
me go
was
ahead
too
and
busy
bring up.
planning his W790 Pro Sage mod to
Oh,
join
yeah,
us
yeah,
on
yeah.
time.
No, no, no. Did you see his custom chassis with the ROG? That one is looking
I haven't
very,
seen
very
it yet.
cool. Yeah,
I'm
that
gonna
one's
have to
looking
check
pretty
that
sweet.
out.
All right, so while I go ahead and bring up his submission form, we'll bring up his images here so we can take a look and make sure that we're seeing the very coolness of that system. Almost want to bring up like two parts of it right there. So yeah, I think that's kind of cool because we can see both pieces right there. Okay.
I'm very curious to know if he modded the two cases together and had both the white and black version of the GT502, or if he painted it. Because I did see someone who had both a like white main section with the black backside and then that flipped mirrored version set side by side. And I think it might have been him. So I'm actually curious to know that now.
All right. So yeah, again, this is Daniel Kuba, Tech 505. You guys can go ahead and check him out on all the socials, Tech 505. If you guys are not following him, he's actually got his own kind of esports lounge. He does some PC building. Really great guy. Has taken advantage of a lot of great hardware, and is a great member within our community too. If you guys are part of our PC group. So does the build have a theme? Recycling. Three words that you would use to describe your build: inspection, creative, and innovative. Inspection's interesting. Maybe because I want to visually look at it and kind of expect it. I can kind of maybe feel that. I can kind of get that. Definitely creative and also definitely innovative. So I think those three words for the description definitely nail it. Does your build have a name? Is the Tough Gaming Recycler? Yeah, I would definitely agree. I think that name works, the Tough Gaming Recycler. So let's see. In terms of core hardware, he's got a fanless GT502 case that he swapped with the white top cover and the white front and the rear panel. So you're right, Jake. This was actually kind of like a mod there where he didn't paint it, but he actually just took the white edition and he took the black and he put them together, which that actually works really well because, of course, you get all the finishing that we've done on our side. So really nice, consistent work on that's it from the factory production. But it also shows we did do this when we designed the chassis. We designed it to kind of be really easy to disassemble for modders. You couldn't do that with a lot of necessarily chassis where you can kind of rip because they might be riveted or they might be kind of maybe structurally not designed to kind of be taken apart. But here you can see he was literally able to kind of take two and make one, which is pretty cool, right? He's got the Tough Gaming Z690 Plus board in there. He has it running with a Raptor Lake, so a 13900K, a Tough Gaming 4080, so definitely one of the latest and greatest based graphics cards. Following our advice there to use that as the foundation for the water-cooled GPU, right? Definitely makes sense. And then Bits Power Water Block Tanks, G-Skill Trident, 6000 MT CL36. He's got an Asus 850 watt power supply, and then the Prime AP201 chassis, right, as well. And that's housing the external cooler, which also has Bit Power Rads. Tough Gaming 120 millimeter edition fans in there, the black editions, right? And then a three-way electronic motor controlled for the ball valves along with the time relay switch, which is what allows for everything to kind of draw in and out and quote unquote go through that recycling action. Overall budget for this build is actually, I think, pretty reasonable all considered what you got going there, which is $4,800. What was he most proud of? I think I'm the first person to build with an electric solenoid valves for water cooling effect with tanks. I'll say I've seen a lot of different mods. And this is the first time I've seen something specifically like this. So, while I'm sure anybody wants to be tentative within the community to say that they were the first, definitely I cannot remember a build that I've seen using this type of design setup. So again, definitely you get hats off for the creativity and the ingenuity there. Is there anything you would do to change out the build? Is the use of silent solenoid valves. So I think that's an interesting proposition, right? I think this was like a proof of concept. I kind of like the mechanized sound. I think it's kind of cool. And it's a little kind of ASMR. Maybe some people, might find it kind of pleasing, kind of like white noise, but I could totally appreciate how somebody would have maybe wanted to just be really, really quiet because potentially that's one of the value points. Not always with liquid cooling. Liquid cooling can sometimes be louder depending on how you configure it, how many fans and, pumps and different things that you have going on. But definitely, I think that's a reasonable and a considerate addition or revision. How long did it take him to overall kind of plan this out, kind of get everything together and done? About 3 months in terms of that. What's the system predominantly for gaming? Warzone, Fortnite, Rust. So definitely sounds like a competitive kind of FPS kind of gameplay experience there. And his overall favorite Asus function or feature, he's a big fan of Armory Crate, which of course makes sense for that RGB aesthetic that he's driving in there. Just one click button to be able to go ahead and tweak and tune everything. You killed it, man. I think awesome job. Very, very cool feature here for the PCDIY Builder Spotlight, right? Very, very cool. Snef also, again, one of the absolute best builders and modders in the game, really. I call him a masterclass builder. Says this is a really great idea, really cool in terms of him being able to kind of put the swap he really likes the AP201 idea to put the rad in it. That's really cool. And again, it's a sensible, as opposed to kind of having to go something expensive and figure out how to put all that. It's nice because you can just fit the radiators. It's kind of small, it's compact, it comes in white, it comes in black. You can have a nice usable amount of space with it, easy ventilation, right? Pretty cool, right? So
Yeah, you know when Steph's giving you kudos that you've done it right.
you've done it right. We got Flash Photo joining us. Hey, man, fantastic. Thanks for joining us from on the YouTube, man. Thank you so much. All right. So I think that covers our PCDIY Builders Spotlight, right?
That it does. The great one to top it off with too. Again, kudos for the work and the ingenuity there. I'm gonna say that if that was not the first, then whenever the first happened was before my time in the community, and that's been years ago. So hats off to you for coming up with such a kind of a novel idea for this.
Very cool. So I think next, before we maybe get into a little bit talking about AV1, a quick recap of just maybe some of the cool latest games. I'd love to know if you guys are joining us in the chat. Are you trying out any of these? I know for me, I'm definitely excited about trying out Returnal. I'm debating though, because definitely I don't know if I would be able to finish in time. For me, February, it's going to be all about Company Heroes. Company Heroes, it's coming. And I'm super juiced about it. So that for me is going to be taking definitely some time on my part. But Returnal has finally hit its bout. It's got some awesome, of course, NVIDIA-centric features and functions right here. So we're finally seeing this being brought over, of course, from, of course, PlayStation to now being able to be having it on the PC side. So just like kind of like God of War was a great example of this. We're now being able to see this on the actual platform and be able to kind of take advantage, of course, of not only the performance, the feature set, right? You can see right here, as you know, you've got NVIDIA DLSS support, right? Which is fantastic to be able to go ahead and even give you a higher level of performance, right? I love the fact that you also have ultra wide and super ultra wide. So if you want to go with something like one of our XG 49-inch ultra wide monitors or something like that, you get native support. You got ray tracing in there. So this is a great title, not only in terms, I think, of the gameplay experience, but of course, a lot of the really rich, cool features that you have from a game engine side are going to be present in here. So how many of you guys are you excited about Returnal? What are you thinking, Jake? Are you excited?
It's definitely something that just even from looking at the aesthetics and the gameplay, I'm very curious to try out. Um, some of the quick videos and stuff I've seen, that right there especially, I just immediately thought of like some of the bullet hell games and like I want to know how this plays.
Definitely, yeah. And this is so the interesting debate here is, do you play with a controller or do you play with the keyboard and the mouse, right?
Ooh.
Right. That's always a discussion, I think, within these type of kind of gameplay environments, right? So, as far as, which is the
No,
right
I've got the
choice.
answer for this.
Okay.
You start with a controller, and then when you keep dying, you get mad, and then you move to the keyboard and mouse. It's when you got to
Okay.
step up and put your game face on.
Uh, I can see that. Some other great titles too is you've got Wanted Dead, right, which is also hitting. That's going to be supporting DLSS. You've got Hogwarts Legacy, which of course just hit, right, which is also really an amazing game in terms of the image fidelity. Quite impressive. I think it kind of surprised people, the level of kind of graphics fidelity that is being offered in that game engine. And you've also got DLSS support. You also have ray tracing support in that game engine. And you've also got Wild Hearts, which is also supporting DLSS as well. And then you also have Atomic Heart, which is going to be another DLSS and RTX based title. For me, this is a big one. I'm really excited actually about Atomic Heart. Again, developer wise, I don't know. There was a couple of in there. Wanted Dead looks really cool. Of course, that's also from an amazing development team that has done some outstanding jobs in terms of the gameplay experience. But Atomic Heart, I think for a lot of people, has been also a game title they've been waiting for a long time, right? I mean, here we've been maybe looking at about like 2 or 3 years. And again, if you're looking for, I think, a new game to be able to kind of push the graphics fidelity, the experience right within what kind of a modern PC gaming system can allow for, I think this is going to be a pretty sweet one. Have you seen this? Have you checked it out?
I actually haven't seen this yet. This is my first time seeing this, so again, the trailer's got my attention. This will be on my list to start looking into.
Very cool. So yeah, so we've got essentially another title here. So all of these actually just within the last, really with the last couple of days, in terms of just the 15th, like 14, 15, 16 for pretty much everything that we've talked about, right? So very cool. HO Computers, this game looks sick. Atomic Braveheart. Yeah, no, I think I'm really excited about this. And again, having the support for essentially DLS and RTX, I think, is going to be pretty sweet too. Lets you take advantage. So if you've got, if you got your 3080, you got your 3090, your 4070 Ti, 4080, 4090, this is going to be sweet. Crank that up and enjoy that gameplay experience, right? So pretty
So
cool.
official here mentioned that he's all about the controller. Shameless plug for the Raikiri and Raikiri Pro. Just gonna throw that out there.
Definitely, yeah, that will be the first ROG controller coming in the not too distant future. Yes, and definitely that's going to be pretty cool. Flash Photo says, for any FPS, I prefer keyboard and mouse for sure. Any other game would be mostly controller. Yeah, I think I probably agree with that. I think with FPS, although sometimes it depends on the way that the game developers laid out, I think the game engine and a kind of a few things. Sometimes I think if the mechanics are a little bit more kind of third person, I might maybe still favor a controller, but it depends, because like a lot of, I'd say, traditional like action RPG, which are third person, I would still be playing that with a keyboard and a mouse, right? So like even when I grew up like playing a lot of like BioWare titles, that's going to be, it wasn't first person and I was using keyboard and mouse. So I think it depends, but I think I like this. I think probably a lot of times first I'm going to be going FPS. If it's FPS centric, going keyboard and mouse, and then I might be looking at a controller, right? But definitely I'm a big fan of controller for anything that might be kind of more in the platforming, indie game titles, racing for sure. There's a lot of great balance. And I think, any gamer is going to say that you're not going to be exclusively one or the other, right? It just depends on your gameplay experience and your preference and kind of the feel that you're looking for, right?
Yeah, that's exactly how I am. I've got my controller at home so that when I just kind of want to relax and play some of the more casual games, it's easy to do so. And then I've also got keyboard and mouse set up for when controller's just not cutting it.
All right. So I think let's get ready to wrap things up here. We're going to talk a little bit about AV1, right? So I know, Jake, this was a little bit kind of something that was new for you, and it might be new for maybe some of you guys that are kind of in the chat, right? As far as kind of wondering about, well, what are we talking about here in terms of AV1? So if you guys are not familiar, AV1 is a codec. So I'm sure you probably heard at some point in your life, you probably heard the word codec, right? And essentially the easiest way to kind of think about it, it's kind of like a file format, a container that provides to your content, right? And it's predominantly aligned with video. And so here, we've lived in the era for a long time with, MPEG H.2.64 and then H.2.65, which was HEVC. And now we're moving into the latest generation AV1, which has now been out for a little while. The exciting part that we're really seeing now within the 40 series, specifically ADA-based GPUs, is that NVIDIA has now introduced support for essentially encoders, not just decoders. So in the prior generation 30 series, you had an AV1 decoding. So let's say if you were watching content that was encoded in AV1, you'd be able to have that done on a hardware level. So the important thing to kind of keep in mind is that when you're talking about a GPU has something that's called fixed function portions. There's essentially parts of the silicon, part of the actual GPU that are designated for specific purposes. The value for this is that they essentially help to mitigate any type of performance penalty from the gaming side, right? Because if you're gaming, you don't necessarily want your encoder or your decoder to be reducing your frame rate, right? And so in the past, this was definitely present. So if you were, let's say, streaming, right, and you were encoding off of your CPU while gaming at the same time, you could have frame time issues, you could have stuttering, you would be reducing performance. So when essentially hardware encoding and decoding was implemented on GPUs, and really kind of led by NVIDIA, because they've worked very, very closely on not only the hardware side, but on the driver and then on the ISV, so the software partner sides, to be able to have great experience and kind of cohesion in this regard, it really helped to improve upon the experience. So it's great because now you can open up something like GeForce Experience and stream, click a button, be putting that out to YouTube gaming, be putting that out to Twitch, maybe saving local gameplay, but not having it be affecting your overall graphics performance, not be affecting your frame rate, right? Which of course frames win, right? The better you have in terms of your frame times, the lower those frame times, right? The higher your frame rate is, the overall better the system latency, the better experience. And so in the past, you might even have to go to like the extremes of having like 2 PC system setups and stuff like that for kind of crazy streamers that would be doing something here. So cool part here now is that with the latest generation, we're going to have that AV1 encoding and that, AV1 encoding and AV1 decoding. Now, here I want to talk about why would you want to necessarily have this, right? Like what are going to be maybe some of the benefits, right? And so one of the first ones is going to be right here when we take a look at the overall efficiency. So when we take a look right here, we've got NVEC H.264, which is the most common right now that is generally being utilized, versus AV1. And we can see that regardless of the resolution, whether you're talking about 1080p or 1440p or 2160, right, so 4K, you essentially are going to have a smaller file size. But critically, because you also have an advanced, essentially, algorithm to be able to pick up all the details and how it's actually processing all of that, you actually get great visual quality. So it's actually matching or exceeding the visual quality of H.264, but at a smaller file size. So this is really important because also, me, I'm lucky enough to have a fiber connection. So I've got pretty much 1 gigabit up and 1 gigabit down. Great. But you might be in a situation, maybe your up is far more limited, or maybe you're dealing with a far slower internet connection speed. Having the advantage to be able to encode and produce smaller file sizes, whether you're the one that's outputting them as a streamer or as somebody that's just recording clips, or vice versa, if you're bringing in content and you can now have that higher quality content but at a lower bit rate, means you're not putting as much strain on your Wi-Fi network, you're not putting as much strain to to your connection, where you don't necessarily maybe have to upgrade to even a higher, faster ISP service, because you're able to actually bring in that same or higher resolution but at a lower file size. So that's a really exciting, I think, innovation that is present within that. And one of the things here is if we, again, take a look here at this other slide, and we'll take a look at a video here in a little bit. But we can also see, and the video might be a little bit clearer when we bring this up, but you can actually see the sharpness and the fidelity. So when you're encoding essentially at this, with this AV1 versus an H.264, you're going to have better motion fluidity. You're going to have better sharpness in the characters. It's overall going to look cleaner, right? And this is also going to facilitate exciting new features, right? So right now, a lot of the streaming content that's been put out there is generally limited to like 60 frames a second, 60 hertz, right? But as we know, many of us all now have faster refresh rates, right? We have maybe faster connections, but we're not taking advantage of them. So the cool thing is here, Twitch, for instance, is already committed to be able to say, hey, with AV1, we're going to let you actually go and stream out up to 1440p and up to like 120 hertz, right? And to leverage that, you want to be able to use AV1, but you ideally need to not only be able to decode, but if you're outputting, you need to be able to encode, right? So a lot of stuff that we've talked about there. What are your some kind of initial thoughts here on this side, Jake?
So I've not been into streaming yet. It's something that I've considered getting into, even if it's just like goofing off and having fun with friends. And there's the potential even for some of the streams that we're doing right now, that this might be to where, say, we're checking out Returnal one weekend, or, one afternoon. So this to me is actually of a nice benefit, because it means that even from our own end here, we'll be able to provide higher quality content to you guys that you might be interested in. Or just in my own time, I'll be able to have fun, and I won't have to, say, invest a ton of resources into a second setup just to make sure that the stream is running at an acceptable quality.
Yeah,
So
for sure. So I think that's definitely one of the kind of key benefits here, is that you get that flexibility of just having more options at a higher quality, right? Now, some important things to keep in mind is that in the latest generation, in terms of the actual encoders, a 4080 and a 4090 are going to be giving you essentially dual encoders, while a 4070 Ti wouldn't have dual encoders. Now, the dual encoders part, we'll talk a little bit more about how that can benefit creators as opposed to just gamers. But definitely here you can see in some of these images just how much clearer and how much sharper you definitely have when you're utilizing AV1 versus when you're utilizing H.264. And so again, the cool thing is now with NVIDIA's very tight kind of partnership and kind of ecosystem work that they've done, is you're seeing this being branched out into more and more applications. So everything from FFmpeg, which is a great kind of community application kind of for encoding video, is supporting AV1 with NVEC, right? You also have Discord, which is now implementing streaming and AV1 support. This is also now built in, right? All these applications, right, you're starting to now scale in this hardware support. And this takes a little bit of time, but this is also really kind of one of the, I think, strongest parts for NVIDIA, is that their kind of ability to co-work with partners to be able to roll in features, right? So we see that with technologies such as with, RTX and DLSS, for example, and here we're seeing it also within AV1. Now, in addition to that, it's not just a benefit within on the gaming side. You also are going to have benefits that are in the content creation side. So you could be maybe in a professional workflow where you're bringing in essentially content, and maybe you're opening up something like DaVinci Resolve right here, and having essentially the hardware optical filter, you have essentially these advanced tensor cores, you have these dual encoders, will allow you to have much smoother actually performance within your editing application, and also really cut down on your actual export times. And having the dual encoders can actually allow you to have even more flexibility at the way that you're actually outputting your rendered content. And so there's a wide number of applications that can have different levels of a benefit when you're kind of looking at how they're utilizing what's called the media engine or different parts of the overall GPU design. But it's pretty cool. Says Flash Photo says, I find AV1 doesn't get the terrible blocking artifacts as the previous codecs. If it's there, it's not as distracting as before. 100%. And part of that is also and due to some of the things that are actually done on NVIDIA side with the optical flow and also the design of AV1. So there's some really kind of cool combination, again, of hardware, firmware, and software all coming together to really be able to offer a smoother, sharper, clearer experience, right? That is also more performance. You can see right here, even compared with a 3090 Ti and then a 4090, look at that performance difference in terms of the encoder, right? And imagine if you were doing this consistently as a content creator, right? You know, being able to see 50% plus performance improvements, that's pretty crazy, right? When you talk about from a collective time saving standpoint, from, you know, day to day, week to week, month to month, that's a pretty big value add, right? So very, very, very cool technology that, again, is going to kind of continue being brought into more and more applications, which I think that's the exciting part, is that we're just starting to really kind of be at the precipice of seeing it kind of roll out to a lot of different spaces. And a lot of different applications. So again, as a recap, Discord now AV1 support, OBS with the version 28 introduced AV1 support, which a lot of people use OBS, right, as kind of their cornerstone for streaming. FFmpeg is great. Also, a little quote here, actually from the developer on FFmpeg, which I thought was pretty cool, which was, the encoder seems to be trading blows with HEVC NVEC. In terms of quality at low bitrate and constant bitrate settings, it seems to outperform it even. It produces fewer artifacts, which speaks to the point that Flash Photo talked about, and the ones it does produce are less jarring to my perception. At higher bit rates, I had a hard time finding differences between the two encoders in terms of subjective visual quality. Using the slow preset, AV1 NVEC outperformed HEVC NVEC in terms of encoding speed by 75 to 100% while performing above tests. Needless to say, it's always massively outperformed H.264 in terms of quality for a given bitrate while also being faster, right? I think that's pretty amazing, especially from just the reputation that FFmpeg has within the community, being a tool that is pretty awesome to see. So very, very cool. I'm going to go ahead and drop a couple of links here in the chat. If you guys are interested in finding out a little bit more information, taking a look at maybe some applications also on, like I said, the creator side that can see some benefits, kind of also rounding out some of the other technologies that are present. You can see right here, there's some great information noted by NVIDIA for things like Autodesk, Maya, Blender, Octane, Redshift, right? Different ISVs, right, that have worked with them for optimization improvements. So I will go ahead and drop those in there, and you guys can check those out. There's also really cool, if I have it here, let me see if I have, very interesting. Yeah, this is a really great article if you kind of want to understand some of the cool things that are being done at understanding at how kind of the signal noise ratios affected between kind of AV1 and H.264, and kind of helping you just understand about how things kind of get smaller, how they can be clearer, how that's actually working through on the hardware level, and how the software development is being done on NVIDIA's side to be able to work and be able to provide these tools for the software to be able to integrate. So some pretty cool stuff there. So I will go ahead and drop those links in there. But overall, great addition. And again, do keep in mind that this is really kind of one of these big benefits that outside of, you know, your DLSS, your RTX, your general raster gaming performance, the power efficiency improvements of 40 series, this is one of the other cool things that you get if you consider something like a 4070 Ti, 4080, 4090. Although keep in mind the dual encoders is limited to the 4080 and to the 4090.
Yeah, I definitely think it's worth highlighting that I feel more and more you're no longer buying just a graphics card in the sense of it's a card to run the graphics on the system. It's becoming a lot more of this ecosystem, and you're buying more than just that. How many frames can I push a second? It's all of the features that's integrating and a lot of quality of life benefits because you've got the new encoding and you've got some of these new streaming tech that's being brought to the market and especially being pushed by NVIDIA. So how much has changed even in what, just the like last 5 years or so. And in another 5 years, just how much easier will it be for people to get into, say, creating their own content and exploring some of their own creative avenues?
Yeah, I'm also putting a cool little demo clip in here in the chat, which you guys can actually check out, which is done on Twitch, and you can actually see the difference in varying resolutions with up to 1440p at 120 FPS, which is pretty cool in terms of kind of just seeing the comparative kind of value and the quality experience. If that's something you guys are interested in checking out, I will also go ahead and note that Microsoft, as well as other popular players like VLC, do have AV1 decoding support. So if you guys haven't, there is an optional AV1 decoder that you can download as part of Microsoft. You can get it for free, right? I will link this in the chat. So if you guys do have a graphics card, like a 30 series, then you can download this to make sure that you have the ability to essentially watch AV1 content within Windows. So that is also kind of another little cool update right there. All right. Any other little questions right there?
Just a couple people talking about some of the benefits, being mentioned that it looks a lot faster than 265. So
Yeah, 100%. Yeah, in Flash Photo, you are correct in terms of that there are now other options that are helping to enable AV1, right? I think, yes, our focus here is definitely on discussing it for NVIDIA, but I think that's kind of also a strength, right? Even as you've seen other companies attempt to do that, NVIDIA has actually been the most responsive at being able to have the broadest kind of adoption within the technology for it. And I think that just speaks to, again, their strength at, long-term ISV integration, right, and partnerships. That's part of the value add, right, in terms of not only the driver maturity and the options you have between the applications, easy drop down options. Even if you kind of look again at OBS, right, you will find that most of the community will tell you that if they're not going to use a constant bitrate encoder, if they're going to use something like NVEC, they prefer NVEC as an option. Its stability and the quality has been really mature, while sometimes with other options, they haven't necessarily always maybe had the same level of consistency or the quality level that they've targeted. And so part of that, it comes to kind of a value add. It's very similar to like when Asus, we talk about our design and development pipeline. There's a lot of different things that are part of kind of the behind the scenes to reach to an end product, right, that are part of that process, right? But
yeah, I definitely want to
overall,
highlight the value add there, because I know, especially when you have these types of discussions, it's largely centered around content creators who are doing this for like a professional type setting, to where they're looking to make money and to grow their channel, etc. But it shouldn't be understated or dismissed of just how much of the general public even this can benefit, because there are a lot of people, and while you won't hear about them as much because it's not their goal to be heavily present in the community, there are plenty of people who do this just because they enjoy it. It's a hobby on the side, it's an outlet for creativity,
yep.
etc. And so stuff like this can benefit a lot of people outside just those who may be seeking to make more videos quicker because more money.
Yeah, or
So
even like you said, just a general user. If you're somebody that likes to sometimes save gameplay clips, right? Maybe you want to use things like Shadowplay, GeForce Experience, have an application where you're recording the video, having that encoder just being able to let you use AV1 and be able to have it be sharper, clearer, and a smaller file. Guess what? That's great. Even though SSD prices are coming down, I know that I would appreciate being able to save a 4K file and have it be 50% smaller and look just as good and not have to take as much space on my hard drive, right? Or excuse me, on
I'm
my SSD, right? So that's, for me, just as a general user, it's not even necessarily somebody that would be using it in a professional scene. It has value. And that's just, just some of the points that we try to bring through here in the stream. Is we try to mix and match it a little bit. From sometimes it might be gamer centric, it might be kind of end user, just general, it could be creator centric. We're going to try to keep this, diversified in terms of the different kind of points that we try to bring to the table. And as always, too, we look back from your guys' feedback in the community on topics that you guys want to be able to see covered within the stream. But I think for the most part, that brings us pretty close to wrapping up the stream. Is that right, Jay?
It does. I will actually pose one question, an idea I just had, but a question to the community as well. For anyone who might be into, say, some type of competitive gameplay, let's say especially something if it's like an MMO like WoW, where you're running raids, and anyone who's played an MMO before knows that generally the first time you run the raid, it doesn't go well. And sometimes the 10th time you run the raid, it still doesn't go well. I'm curious to know, if something like this, where you might have higher clarity or quicker turnaround on some of these, like the video clips and everything to do analysis in between runs, I wonder
Mm.
if it benefits, like gamers of that nature as well.
Yeah, I didn't even think about that, right? But yeah, I suppose like, if you were like in a clan or a faction or just like a group of players, being able to, record, quick segments within your game, again, using stuff like Shadowplay where you can capture, the last 5 minutes or the last kind of key, moment within that kind of map scenario or that kind of run through. That's great because you can share that amongst each other. And again, if you're sharing files back and forth, if you're sending them to each other, if you're uploading them, again, speed and quality being improved and being smaller, I think is only going to be beneficial there. So I think you make a great point there.
Well, like you said, I think that about wraps it up. As JJ mentioned, please leave your feedback, comments. Definitely let us know what you're interested in seeing. Soon, I think we're going to take a little bit of a deeper dive into DLSS 3 and some of the benefits of it. But there are a lot of technologies out there, and even the hardware itself is a little bit more diverse. If you start digging down into the metal past just, oh, there's a cooler and there's the chip and some VRM setup on it. So anything that you're interested in like this, please let us know. We're more than happy to provide knowledge or give you insight into something or help you look into one of these like features you may not have known about before or just didn't know that it might even apply to you.
For sure. For sure. So again, guys, thanks for checking out the stream. If you guys have any questions, comments, or feedback, feel free to go ahead and drop them in the chat down below. If you're watching this on demand, same thing. You can go ahead and drop them down below, or go ahead and make sure to join us in our Asus PCDIY community, and make sure to go ahead and check us out on our Asus graphics card social channels. So again, that's on YouTube, Facebook, and Twitter. All right, guys, take care, take it easy, and see you guys next Friday. And if you guys want to find out about all things Asus as well, make sure to go ahead and check us out for tomorrow's weekly PC DIY live stream, Fridays at 3 p.m. All right, guys, take care, take it easy, and enjoy the rest of your day.
Thanks, everyone.